Welcome to Rise and Shine Daily. It's a Wednesday, midweek, and I'm wondering how your week has gone so far. But if you ask me, it's been a fantastic one, and that's why we are always here every day from Monday through to Friday on Rise and Shine Daily to make sure we keep you updated with some of the important conversations making the rounds in the country. My name is Janice Kobum. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful day to be alive and a great day to start afresh, more like Rise and Shine wherever you are. My name is Uyai Aniekan, and it's a great delight to be here this morning. I'd like to remind you to be a part of the community, join the conversation, and let's hear you on your thoughts and issues that are raised on Rise and Shine, of course, of national issues,
interest,
also matters of national interest. Let's hear your thoughts about it. I mean, the media is here for you, so you can do that by following us across all the social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtv.ng. We also have a phone lines displayed on the screen in the course of the program. Feel free to call us, send us WhatsApp or text messages, and we'd love to really engage your contributions. Good morning once again.
Yeah, definitely engaging conversations.
Yes.
And I know that Nigerians have not taken the back seat in terms of raising their opinions and sharing whatever it is they think about certain issues that we discuss here on Rise and Shine. But again, it's another day to talk about a country that we love so much, and of course the only country that we have and can boast about.
Definitely.
Because I remember they say that there's no place like home. You know, growing up, they will say home sweet home, no place like home. So there is no place like home right now. But yeah, before we go into our major conversations, just like we are having a link up from some major conversations we've had in the course of the week, there is a flash news here that says leaked audio NCC cannot track leaked telephone conversations, says director. And that is, you know, the point that we actually brought that conversation to the day we had it, where we said that, look, NCC, which is the Nigerian Communication Commission, should be able to tell Nigerians how these conversations came out to the public. If we are saying that we do not have privacy anymore to our conversations via phone, then I think that's serious problem here right now. Does it mean that people go about bugging other people's phones or tape wiring other people's phones without the interference or without the contribution and connivance of the Nigerian Communication Commission?
Of course, we've seen the NCC denying allegations of cell phone tracking and the leakage made against it by some individuals and groups on social media. Like you said, there was a question raised. The NCC had to answer to how this was happening under their watch. Who gave the authorization, you know, for these audio to be leaked in the private telephone, alleged, you know, private telephone conversation between Bishop Oyedepo and the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. And this is serious. It's funny to see that the NCC is attempting, that's what we'll say, attempting to distance themselves. Once we see the NCC distancing themselves from this, it's easy for us to bend to the divide to say that this was a doctored, you know, conversation. Because if the NCC say we cannot track, we cannot give, we cannot trace this particular conversation, it did not come from our stables. I mean, the closest thing to lean on to is the fact that it was doctored by opposition to the Labour Party and all of that. It's really funny times that we live in Nigeria. All manner of things are flying about, and like you said, it's most important that the institutions in charge of some of these things are called to question. So the validity of the audio can be given to us by the NCC or not, but you know that the NCC, if it comes out to say, oh yes, this is an actual thing, it was traced to the phone lines, you will now have to explain how it got to public domain and who gave the authorization. So there's still a lot of questions, you know, hanging around this conversation. I feel like this still doesn't unhang the NCC from that leaked audio.
Yeah, definitely. But they have said that they are distancing themselves from that particular audio leakage, and we'll leave it at that until it is proven for the wrong by the Nigerian government. But again, let's look at major stories making the rounds. And it seems that Labour Party and the presidential candidate Peter Obi is going to be on the media for the longest of time. Now, the federal government has accused their major opposition leader of treason weeks after the candidate of the ruling party won a hotly contested presidential elections. And government spokesperson Lai Mohammed gave the government's position during an engagement with journalists in Washington, D.C. in the United States. Mr. Mohammed, who is the information minister of the outgoing government, accused the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, of inciting people to violence over the outcome of the presidential elections, saying it is treasonable. Mr. Obi came third in the 25 February presidential elections won by Bola Tinubu of the ruling APC. Mr. Obi and Atiku Abubakar, who came second, are, however, challenging the results of the elections in court, saying the election and result collation was flawed. Both men have publicly called on their supporters to refrain from violence while they challenge the results in court. Now, the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, gave the ammunition in Washington, D.C. during his official engagement with some international media organization. Now, we talked about a little bit about this, yesterday when we said that some Nigerians in diaspora, especially in the U.S., have decided to seek for an order to protest, and we saw that protest. I hope we can have them on the screen right now. We saw that protest actually happen. Nigerians in diaspora coming out to protest the outcome of the results of the presidential elections. And here we see the government of the country, on that its spokesperson Lai Mohammed, saying that it is actually treasonable. For him, it is very wrong. It is very wrong, that the Labour Party presidential candidate in one breath will be going to court to seek redress of the presidential elections, and in one breath be inciting violence. But the question now is, where? Because we have not seen it anywhere. I remember that when the election results was collated and the final announcement made, a lot of Nigerians were thinking that the country was going to be torn apart, because if somebody like Peter Obi came out and said we are going to protest, I know that Nigerian youths especially would have taken to the streets to protest this particular results. But I know that in the instance of the announcement of the results and total collations and everything, we had Peter Obi come out and make a statement towards his supporters, let there be calm. And I think that to a large extent there has been relative calm in the country for the outcome of this particular election. But we'll take a listen to that protest in US, and when we come back, of course, we continue on this conversation.
And they prevented them from voting. It was serious violence that I witnessed myself. They told people that you cannot vote because you look like a certain way, or because you are from a certain part of Nigeria. That is not what Nigeria is all about. That is not what democracy is all about. That, I can tell you now, is a crime against humanity. And I think United States should never stand for this. We Nigerians in the United States should never stand for this. The reasons why most of us voted, because I was doing some work trying to convince people to vote for Labour Party in Badagry West. And they were telling me, regular people were telling me, they said our votes never counted in the past. Why should we vote now? And I told them, I said, oh, don't worry. INEC said they have beavers. And if you got beavers, that same beavers will transmit, the results electronically. I was wrong. On February 25th, serving as a polling unit officer, I saw that the beavers was never used. Yes, they fill out the forms and everything, but no transmission was done. None. Not in the Badagry West, where I serve as a polling unit agent. I just want to let you know that. Not only that, we find out on the night, while we were still doing collation, and some of our polling unit agents were sleeping at the collation center, that the result for presidential election that was supposed to happen, uploaded by beavers, going into the IRF, we find out that only the results for the other votings and elections, except for the presidential, were loaded. The results for presidential election was never uploaded. Yet, Mahmoud Yakubu Haine went ahead and declared somebody a presidential candidate while we were still having problem uploading the result from the presidential elections. So, what we had was just a selection. There is no, just like our vice principal said, there is no president now for Nigeria. There is no president-elect. And finally, this is what I'm going to say. Because I'm a lawyer, I'm able to read the 100-page petition submitted by Labour Party and Obi to the Election Tribunal. One of the most important things you have to understand is this, and you have to realize. The person they select as the current president for Nigeria does not meet the constitutional requirements. Let me say that again. He does not meet the constitutional requirements. His vice president does not meet the constitutional requirements. So, we want the United States to do the right thing. We want the United States Congress to do the right thing, to make sure they stand with the majority of the Nigerian people and make sure that democracy actually prevails in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, a lot of concerns and points raised there by Nigerians in diaspora, especially the United States, where that particular protest held. It's good to see that although, you know, these people are outside the country, they are particular about things happening in their homeland. So that when we are falling back on the conversation that we are having, you're not saying that, you know, the opposition is inciting violence and insurrection in the country. You're seeing the way that Nigerians in diaspora are reacting to an election that happened in their home country that they are not necessarily, you know, face to face with right now. But then when you also talk about the fact that, you know, pushing allegations of treason on the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, and his vice presidential candidate, Dati Baba Ahmed, you know, of pushing conversations that can be held treasonable, and also pushing conversations of insurrection. The quick analysis will be point towards where you have seen the Labour Party followers protest nationwide ever.
Yeah.
You know, since the elections were done. We've had, you know, other parties, like for instance, the People's Democratic Party, with their candidates, had gone on a peaceful protest to the INEC office. We have also seen a lot of squabble happening in Rivers State, where we've even seen the APC and the People's Democratic Party go to contest the results of the elections in Rivers State, you know, for the gubernatorial election. These things are happening. But if you're saying that the Labour Party is pushing a conversation of, you know, insurrection and the likes, you need to be able to, you know, draw the line directly to where you see Labour Party followers, you know, protesting or causing. No, and it's very funny to also notice that Labour Party followers, they've also been kind of quiet on social media. If you notice the noise they made before the elections, the kinds of campaigns and the way they were, you know, mostly in the faces of people, they seem to have mellowed down because their leader had said, we do not want any kinds of problems. We are heading to the court and let's do that.
The point is, let us establish the fact that even a protest in a country is constitutional.
Exactly.
So far as the protest is peaceful. So when you're saying that people are protesting and you're thinking that it is wrong, I really wonder where that is wrong. It is not wrong for people to protest. But the point is, do people go overboard when they protest? And if we want to be truthful to ourselves, we've not really seen that play out, even as an aftermath of the presidential elections.
True.
But let's establish something here. I like that the section 37 of the Criminal Code in Nigeria talks about treason. And it's not something that we just come out and say this particular issue is treasonable.
Exactly.
Because of the magnanimity of, not even that magnanimity, but the weight of which a treasonable offense is taken in any country. Now, Section 37 of the Criminal Code Act in Nigeria says treason, any person who leaves war against the state in order to intimidate or overawe the president or the governor of the state is guilty of treason. and is liable to the punishment of death. Now, the B part of it also says, any person conspiring with any person, either within or without Nigeria, to levy war against the state with intent to cause such levying of war as would be treason, if committed by a citizen of Nigeria, is guilty of treason and is liable to the punishment of death.
Yeah.
So if we're saying that the Labour Party presidential candidate has, his actions over the past few weeks or months is treasonable, then you're saying that Mr. Peter Obi should be liable to death.
Yeah.
And what has he done to the point that you say he is liable to death?
Exactly.
Nigerians will also be of the opinion that you're trying to shut him up because he is still pushing for maybe for his mandate, according to him, a redress of the presidential elections. So I think that beyond just coming out to say, oh, this is treasonable, we should also look at the weight of such issues or such comments as well, because it's too weighty to just come out. And then when you're even talking about treasonable matters, we go back to even the issue of the new Naira policy, okay, where we had some governors in northern Nigeria come out, especially led by Nasser El-Rufai. And even after the president had said that the 500 and 1,000 is no longer legal tenders. Oh yeah, what happened? We are not forgetting
blatantly in the face of the media.
In the face of the media. You come out and say that, look, in your own state, go ahead, use the money. Is that not treasonable? So we should try to weigh some of the things that we do and say before we begin to say, oh, this is treasonable or this is not treasonable. So you're not twisting the law to yourself to benefit you, and the law is quoted out of context for some other person. It doesn't make
exactly
sense.
What I was going to say. If you remember yesterday in our conversation, we talked about some parties, people, different people in the polity of our country. When it's in their favor, they interpret the laws to fit them. When it's something they want to use against another person, they interpret the laws, against those people, because at the end of the day, the judiciary is the only hope we actually have. Because if this constitution and guidelines are here, just like you have stated, the code of the treason law in Nigeria, it is there in black and white, printed. We all have the laws. We need to have people who interpret the constitution and the laws of our land, so that people don't just go and quote sections and just say what they want to say. Because also, if we want to look at this very closely, Alaa Mohammed's, interview that he granted in Washington, D.C. If you also look, he's also stoking his contribution into the current tension in the country. Because there are some Nigerians that will not buy what he has just said. So he has also put his 2 cents into the fire, quote and unquote, the tension rather that is building in the country. Because how do you say that someone, has said things that are treasonable? Now, just to quote Alaa Mohammed, now he said, Obi and his running mate Dati Baba Ahmed cannot be threatening Nigerians that if the president-elect Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress is sworn in on May 29, it will be the end of democracy in Nigeria. Right. Now, he said in his words, this is treason. You cannot be inviting insurrection, and this is what they are doing. He said Obi's statement is that of a desperate person. He's not the Democrat that he claims to be. Now, these are some of the things that Alaa Mohammed said in his interview. When you're saying, when the likes of Dati Baba Ahmed said, swearing in Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is the current president-elect of the country, on May 29 will be the end of democracy, I think we should fall back and define what democracy is. What is democracy? And if you are employing the use of English, when someone says the end of democracy, government for the people, of the people, by the people, I know I've scrambled that a little bit, but that's basically what it is. If you're now using the use of English, if we say swearing in this person is going to be the end of democracy, you're saying it's going to be the end of government for the people, of the people, and by the people. I do not see anywhere, if we are applying the use of English, where that suggests that there is going to be, a war. Do you understand? There's no way where that comes in. So it's just also the way we are hasty. Our politicians are hasty to try to take things out of context to push a narrative that they themselves believe in.
And that will further heat up the economy.
Further heat up the polity. Yeah. Yes. So that's the problem we are sitting on right now. It's a trade and banter of words. And I hope that Nigerians at this time are becoming more critical thinkers, so that we do not swallow everything that anybody, including the Labour Party, are giving. You can't just take their words and start running. You need to sit down and reevaluate. What is the motive behind these things that this particular person has said? Why is Lai Mohammed saying this? You know, why is Dati Baba Ahmed saying this? What is the truth? And what are the constitutional backings for these kinds of things? The likes of Dati Baba Ahmed also had quoted the Constitution as it relates to what his standpoint is. So it's just a massive problem. But also, like we said in the case of the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, the NBC, you cannot just pick up, for instance, this is an allegation now that Lai Mohammed has pushed. We do not expect that the DSS or the state security forces in the country will just move without proper investigations into this allegation. Is it worth carrying out, you know, at this time?
Anyways, very quickly, I like the fact that the Labour Party presidential candidate was also swift in response to, you know, what Lai Mohammed said. Because like I said earlier, that's very weighty allegation when you begin to say that a comment made by a particular person or his action or inaction is very, very treasonable. And so the presidential candidate of Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, yesterday described the allegation of treason leveled against him and his vice presidential candidate, Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed, by the federal government as malicious, fictitious, and an apparent campaign of calumny against them. Obi said this in a statement in reaction to the accusation of treason against him and his running mate in the just concluded presidential election by the Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed. So obviously we are not expecting anything less, you know, from the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. He has to also come out to debunk, you know, what Lai Mohammed has said, and true to type, he was swift about it to make sure that Nigerians understand also his standpoint when he's talking about, you know, pushing for a redress and seeking for a redress of the presidential elections that happened on February. So give and take, I think that like you said earlier, we should just be careful of the kinds of things that we say. Is either we are hitting up the policy the more, trying to also make Nigerians see reason, because I think that at this point in time, what Lai Mohammed and the APC are trying to do is more like
credibility of the just concluded
credibility of the just concluded elections. And I think that it is not also, it is very undemocratic of them. Okay, so if the elections have happened, I think that overall, what are Nigerians thinking about the election? We were talking the other day about a particular song that was released by Fowles, and he gave an open verse, and you need to hear what Nigerians are saying about, you know, all that happened during the presidential election. So nobody is even talking more of the gubernatorial elections and state houses of assembly elections. Everybody is very particular about the presidential elections. And I think instead of heating up the polity the more, the federal government should at some point call themselves together and try to see and address some of the situations, some of these allegations made by Nigerians towards the presidential elections. I think that is what should be done, and not necessarily saying that, oh, you don't have a right to protest, you don't have a right to do this, you don't have
freedom of expression. Is something else that is actually, you know, forcefully fought against in this particular season, because if you also look at this is an attempt to fight the freedom of expression by, you know, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party and his vice. You're saying they cannot speak up in terms of what, you know, they have seen. Do not forget that the People's Democratic Party also has pushed for a redress of the election. And Lai Mohammed, still in this particular interview in Washington, D.C., actually said that there is no pathway to victory for either Obi or Atiku, although they are attempting to contest the results of the election. So either way, whether or not they are going to court, that they do not, both of them
don't stand a chance.
Yes, they do not stand a chance at victory. So you're saying if we reevaluate how the election was done, everything was done, that neither of them stands a chance at victory, because in his words, that none of them made up the constitutional requirements to be declared president-elect. How can you say that when we have not reevaluated how the elections were done? I mean, there is an entire process for this to be done if the courts will overhaul the election. You know, if it decided by, you know, the evidences laid before them. You cannot come and give a summary conclusion over a proceeding that is already heading to court, that neither of them can stand, you know, they do not have pathway to victory. So some of these things are very, the conversations are heating up the polity of the country as it stands. And these are absolutely unacceptable things at this time, whether it's by the APC, whether it's by the Labour Party. And let's not also see the fact that upon him coming out to give this allegation, the likes of the People's Democratic Party have come out to respond on behalf of the Labour Party presidential candidate. We've had the spokesperson for the NNPP also come out, respond on behalf of the Labour Party presidential candidate. Because at the end of the day, what we are looking at, it looks like you're fighting a particular party and a particular presidential candidate, but spiral and expand it. You're actually, you know, fighting against the Nigerian state. You're actually fighting against the people of the country. You're saying that collectively we cannot ask questions of proceedings of things that happen in the country. So for me, it was beautiful and instructive to see that the likes of the People's Democratic Party, the NNPP, came out to say, we do not see on any grounds where you are saying that the Labour Party presidential candidate has committed a treasonable, you know, offense. And we think that this, you know, thing should be retracted, as it were. So we see Lai Mohammed also, he mentioned the particular inciting remark made by the Labour Party presidential candidate. While his supporters are perceived to be young and irrescribable Nigerians, Obi in his public appearance has repeatedly called for calm, insisting that the law court must be allowed to decide the election matter. This has been Peter Obi's
the stance of the Labour Party presidential candidate,
since the elections were done. Dati Ahmed has an opinion. I know, like we talked about earlier, they are doing a merger. I mean, presidential candidate, vice presidential candidate. Your vice presidential candidate said it, so it's more like a Labour Party thing. But like I've said, apply the use of English to the things that Dati Baba Ahmed said. Where is the fault?
Well, Nigerians will keep fingers crossed and we'll see how unfolding matters will get. But let's remember that the country is not supposed to be heated up more than it is already. So we'll join hands to make sure that, of course, we have peace in the country, whether you're Labour Party, your APC, your NNPP, or your People's Democratic Party. It is just one country that we have, and as much as we have that country, we shouldn't also be gagged in trying to repress us from expressing ourselves as Nigerians, because we have a right to do so. At this point, we'll take a breather, and when we come back, of course, we'll be handing over to Mary Joseph, who will be taking us on News Brief. And when we come back, we'll join our guest this morning, and we'll be looking at the media and freedom of expression and how the recent clampdown on a private media station is affecting the media space in totality. We'll also have Daily Spotlight, where we get to look at some of the major stories on the front page of our national dailies. We'll be back very, very shortly. Don't move a muscle.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories, and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abuse. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my
this
lord.
an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on Star Times DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum, live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin this morning with a report that President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered the Executive Vice Chairman, EVC, of the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, Professor Mohammed Haruna, to immediately hand over his office to the next most senior officer in the establishment. The Office of the Secretary of the Government of the Federation disclosed this in a statement by its Director, Information, Willie Bassi. Reports say this follows the reversal of the extension in the office granted by the President from April 2nd to 2023 to April 2nd, 2025, due to the fact that the EVC had completed 2 tenures of 5 years, which in the organization. Away from that, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, LP, Peter Obi, has criticized the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, over allegations of inciting a post-election insurrection. At a press conference in Washington, D.C., Mohammed reportedly warned Obi to desist from stoking violence following the February 25 presidential election, which saw the emergence of Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress as the winner. We move to health, where people have been advised on the basic health safety measures to help stop the contact and spread of cholera across the country. Speaking with newsmen, health professionals in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State pinpointed ingestion of unclean food and water, living in untidy environments and improper waste disposal as some ways of contacting cholera. They described one of the symptoms of the disease as passing out of excessive water stool. The health experts encouraged the public to imbibe healthy living habits to combat the disease. They also urged the government to initiate proactive measures such as training and retraining of community health workers to ensure wide prevention, as well as thorough use of media in reaching out to more people. On the foreign scene, former U.S. President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 felony criminal charges during a court hearing in New York. The former U.S. president was accused of falsifying records to hide damaging information during the 2016 election. The charges focused on a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels. She claimed to have had an affair with Trump, which he denies. In sports, Lucas Holle scored a 95th minute penalty as Freiburg came behind to knock Bayern Munich out of the German Cup in the quarterfinals. Bayern took the lead through Dayot Opomacho's header, but Nicolas Hofel equalized 8 minutes later. It was Thomas Tuchel's second game in charge after Bayern beat Borussia Dortmund 4-2 in the league on Saturday. Freiburg lost last year's final on penalties to RB Leipzig, while Bayern Munich have failed to reach the last four for the 3rd consecutive year. That's all on our news brief this morning. We'll bring you details of this and more in our news at 12. I'm Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Janice and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
As of government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in counting.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories on how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding you, your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
right. Thank you so much for still being there. Of course, we just came back from the news brief desk where we had Mary Joseph tell us some global tidbits there. And of course, we brought you tidbits. There's something to learn on Rise and Shine every day. But this particular conversation means a lot to us in the media sector. And we are looking at media and the freedom of speech, freedom of expression as well. Joining us to have this very important conversation is Rashid Olariwaju, who is an ace broadcaster and of course a journalist as well. He's reaching us via audio from Cross River State, Calabar. Thank you so much, Rashid. Good morning and thank you for joining us. Good morning, and thank you so much, Rashid, for joining us. Are we having problems joining with our guests very quickly? I think we can actually work on that and get our guests back on set. But yeah, hello, good morning, and thank you so much. Okay, fantastic. We couldn't hear you in the first place. Thank you so much for joining us, Rashid. Good morning. Hi, it's Calabar.
Yeah, good morning, Janice. Good morning, Janice. Good morning, Uyai. Good morning, Spectrum's family. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I like the energy from your end this morning, Rashid. How is Calabar? How is Cross River State? You guys say it's a season of sweetness.
Calabar is cool. The environment is where it is season of sweetness, as you are aware. The weather is cool. And it's a bright day here in Cross River State capital.
Okay, fantastic. Let's talk about the media space and, of course, the challenges facing us in recent times. Just to put perspective to this conversation, of course, recently we saw a private media station being sanctioned and fined 5 million naira for actually granting an interview to the Labour Party presidential candidate Dati Baba Ahmed, where he said that on May 29, it shouldn't be possible that the president-elect in the person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu should be sworn in because constitutionally he did not meet the requirement of being a president-elect. And that is causing a lot of rift as we talk. And I just want you to, chip in your own opinion about what the media stands for and what the media is supposed to, the role the media is supposed to be playing in any government.
Well, like I always say when I want to discuss the media, my intro into any discussion that has to do with media is that you remove the media and you have no good governance. You remove the media and you have an unlawful society. You remove the media and you have a state of statelessness. Because the media actually is the soul of any society, any country, any nation. I mean, you just wake up one day, there is no internet to read newspaper online. All the TV stations are shut down. All the radio stations are shut down. You don't need anybody to tell you that there is something wrong somewhere. Perhaps war is looming. So the role of the media in any society cannot be overemphasized. And in this case, in a democratic environment, the media play a major role. As a matter of fact, in Nigeria, just as it is in Africa and other developed countries of the world, media have always been at the forefront, of getting things done positively in the interest of the people, in the interest of the masses. So the democracy we are enjoying in Nigeria today is as a result of the efforts of the Nigerian media. We fought for it and we will continue to nurture it until we get to our destination. So that is just by the way. Straight to your question, Nigeria is a constitutional country. We are governed by the rule of law. If that is the case, any lawful government agencies department or parastatal must be obeyed as long as they are established by the law. So the statement credited to Dati Baba Ahmed is very unfortunate, to say the least. If truly you want to be vice president of Nigeria, if truly you consider Nigeria above any other entity in this country, if truly he knows that first of all he's a citizen of this country before he can claim to be anything else, then that statement is unfortunate. But that is the bad luck we have.
And sort that out.
Don't try as much as possible to control his emotions. Keon tried as much as possible to let him know that he was on a global and national media. But he wouldn't listen. He wouldn't listen. I think what he should do is to tender a public apology to Nigerians first before the constituted authority. So, INEC has conducted the election. INEC is an established commission by the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Mr. Rashid, I think I would like to bring you back a little bit. Now, when you say that Dati Baba Ahmed should actually tender an apology, and he went too emotional, in trying to address the outcome of the presidential elections, I would like to, ask where exactly and what exactly he said that you think that he became too emotional. Whatever he said was that there is a constitutional requirement that must be met before someone could be declared as president-elect. And it was also backed by the Constitution. He also made mention of the section of the Constitution that says so. So where exactly did he act out of emotions to the point that, of course, Lai Mohammed has also tagged that particular comment treasonable?
It's not only Lai Mohammed. Lai Mohammed is just one out of thousands of Nigerians and beyond who have condemned that statement. That was the area I was going before you came in. I said INEC was an agency or commission of government. INEC conducted an election. INEC declared a winner, and INEC issued a certificate of return to the winner. Now, what you should do as a lawful citizen, that if you are not happy or you are not in line with what INEC has done, then the judiciary is there. That is why we have three arms of government. The judiciary is there for you to go, and I know that he and his principal have started the process of going to the tribunal in ensuring that what they are saying was anomaly should be corrected. That is what should be done in a same country, not you. Now, specific to the question you asked. Baba Dati Ahmed said the president-elect should not be sworn in by the judiciary of this country on May 29. I mean, that is out of. I'm sure he himself did not know when he was saying that. Let me believe that Dati Ahmed will publicly tender apology to Nigerians and, of course, the constituted authority. So even went further to state that if the judiciary is sworn in the president-elect on May 29, that will be the end of democracy in Nigeria. Can you beat that? Where was Dati Baba Ahmed when people were fighting for this democracy that all of us are enjoying today? Like they always say, Awolowo said, and it's a popular quote today, the worst of democracy is better than the best of the military. In the military, you and I cannot be talking the way we are talking. In the military, you don't have rule of law. In the military, you don't have constituted court. In the military, you don't fundamental human right. The fact that Dati Baba Ahmed can even stand up and speak publicly is enough to give credit to democratic governance and democratic environment. For him to have said that if the president-elect is sworn in on May 29, then that will be the end of democracy in Nigeria. I mean, it was too much for him to have said that.
Okay.
And like I said, in a sane society, first of all is that he will come out openly again that, sorry, I didn't mean what I said. I apologize to Nigerians. I believe in this country. I believe in democracy. That is why I participated to be part of the democratic process. And whatever I may have said, please, I'm sorry.
Well, Dati Baba Ahmed has reiterated that he still stands on his comments as granted in that particular interview, and he's not retracting it because, I mean, he defends himself by the fact that there are constitutional, processes that give him the impetus to make that statement. He, right now, doesn't want to retract that. He still stands on it. But then, let's lean back a little bit on this conversation. We are looking at, media and press freedom in Nigeria. Something caught the attention of Nigerians in the course of this, that we have even seen civil society organizations call the attention of the federal government. For the first time in a very long time, it was a political party that raised brows of the things that Dati Baba Ahmed said in that particular interview and pushed for a sanction to be given to that media house. And within 5 days of pushing that particular petition, we saw the NBC move swiftly and attempt to slam and sanction that media house to the tune of 5 million naira. Now the question is, at what point is the NBC now ruled or governed by the whip and caprices of politicians? Because before that particular petition was given, the sneeze did not land. The NBC picked it up and ran with it. Are we looking at a political administration coming in that will stand on the neck of media freedom in this country?
Well, first of all, any attempt by any government, any administration, or any government for that matter, to gag the media in Nigeria, just as it is in any African country, cannot stand the test of the time. We have seen that in the past and it didn't work. In fact, in the heydays of the military tried it, but it did not work. So every facet and arms of government have their constitutional role. The media roles in society is well spelled out. And in Nigeria, we know the role we play. As they call us, the fourth estate of the realm. It means that after the executive, after the legislature, after the judiciary, the next is the media. So, any attempt to drag the media will work. But that is just by the way. To your questions, I don't even see, given the antecedents of the president-elect, I don't see him as someone or as a leader that will want to gag the media. It was Tinubu himself is the creation of the media. If you follow his antecedents, Tinubu came back into the country in the 90s. Strictly joined, the Hope 93 at the time. And when June 12th election was annulled, it was the media that survived this country and those who struggle for this country at the time. And Tinubu was one of them. I'm talking of the days of Nadepo. So I don't see him as someone who does not believe in the media and its fundamental human right. Now, the content, we all know that every society is governed by the rule. Nigeria is governed by the rule. The media itself is governed by the rules and regulations. And we have our ethics well clearly spelled out in this rule. the NBC is the sole regulator of all broadcast stations in Nigeria. And the role they play include but not limited to sanction any media houses that is seen to have created a content that is inciting or that has planned in doing so. Now, in this case, it was an individual that did this, but using a platform of a broadcast station in disseminating this information we are talking about. In my view as a practitioner, I think beyond what Seun has done, I think what channels should have done immediately after that program should have been to issue a disclaimer like they normally do, like any other reputable media organization would have done, that all the content there from this interview was not from our organization, but from the person who appeared. Therefore,
Seun had
channels or
emphasized
any other
that
organization should not be held responsible.
in his conversation with the guest. The presenter actually emphasized that.
That is what I said. He tried to do. I'm talking of the organization itself now.
Okay.
I'm talking of the organization itself.
Okay, Mr. Rashid.
About 8 times, the presenter tried to even control the guest. That this is a national TV, Mr. Babadati Ahmed, you have to and not that. But you could see someone whose mind had already made up in making such statement.
Mr.
Now
Rashid,
we need to be very careful here.
Let's also come back.
Because we are going into a transition.
Let's come back a bit.
We need to be very careful.
Okay, let's come back a bit to even the National Broadcast Corporation, NBC now, Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation. We had this interview carried out, right? And nothing was said about it. There was no issuance of any sanctions on this particular private establishment, even after the interview. Now, 5 days later, we had the presidential candidate and the president-elect under the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, petition the NBC and also asked that this private media station be sanctioned. And immediately, the embassy ran with it. So is it that the embassy was not following the conversations when this happened for it to call this private station to order and waited for a political party to bring up the issue before it saw the need to sanction this private organization? So the question now is the NBC even independent of its own?
And also, what investigations were made before the slam was given? Yes.
I think it is time for NBC, good enough, we have NBC in each of every state of the federation. In Akwa Ibom, where you have your stations there's NBC representative.
Of course,
there.
yes.
I think it is for NBC to now respond to this question. But in my own layman understanding, NBC is an organization representing the interests of all Nigerians. So any persons, group of persons, or even an organization can remind of, inform NBC on certain things that are not done well by certain organizations, certain media organizations. So it's not for NBC alone to raise. It's just like police or EFCC or ICPT or any of the anti-graft agencies. Yes, the anti-graft agency, but somebody must put up a petition. Somebody must give them information. Somebody must say something has happened. They will now look into it and, go through their law and see that, okay, this information given, this petition given is actually against our rules of engagement, our code of ethics or not. So, if the petition written by either a political party or an individual or a group of persons is a good petition that is against the rules of engagement of NBC, it wasn't in an error. Like I said, NBC should come out and explain this. I'm just giving my own insight as I know. And I think what I'm saying in all ramifications should be correct. I think so. Because NBC cannot be everywhere. It is somebody somewhere that we record, take to NBC and attach a petition that so person has done this, so person has done this. Just like police. Police cannot be everywhere in the country. Somebody will give useful information to the law enforcement agency that crime has been committed at so place. EFCC cannot be everywhere in the country. Somebody somewhere will write a petition that some persons or group of persons has committed a financial crime. Please investigate and invite the person. They look into it. If it meets their desire as it's prescribed with their own rules of engagement, they will now invite the person. I think this is what, in my view, the NBC has done. See, don't let us try to be emotional here. Let's call a spade a spade. What Dati Baba Ahmed has done was an invitation to chaos. Like I was trying to say, we need to be very, very careful, especially in the days ahead. We are going into a transition election. And, you know, in every transition election, there's always temptations, tensions, and arguments here and there. Because interest of the people, you know, are being trampled upon. Because some certain persons have not gotten what they wanted. Hello, can every politician be like President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan in this country?
Now, Rashid, when you say we are trying to be, let's not be emotional. I like that you're saying let's not be emotional, because we're not being emotional here. And the case is that if Dati Ahmed came to a particular station and made comments, then sanctions should be tilted to Dati Ahmed and not necessarily the station that particular comment was made. Now, a lot of Nigerians, even under the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project. Please hold on, sir. Hold on, sir. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project is also suing the federal government and NBC for this particular action against the media.
We are communicating to the public.
Yes, sir.
And if we are communicating to the public, we need to educate the public, because whatever we are saying out here, the public are listening and are watching. Whatever we are saying is what they will take into consideration. If we are saying what you are saying, then it means you don't know the role of the NBC as the regulatory body of all the broadcast stations in this country. Like I said, any attempt to gag the media will be resisted all over the country.
But that's what a lot of Nigerians think is happening. That the media, that the government is making the media, and NBC making the media walk on eggshells, which is not supposed to be so.
Hello, Janice. Hello, Uyai.
We're here with
The statement made by Dati Baba Ahmed, in your view, is it good or not?
We are not in the position to give a response to that.
Okay. Now, if it is good or it is not good, did he make that statement using his Facebook or Twitter? Even if it uses Twitter or Facebook, the regulatory agencies in the country has that so right to have you forgotten when the federal government banned Twitter in this country?
We're not
have you forgotten that? So there is always a vehicle to do anything you are doing. The vehicle for Dati Baba Ahmed, the vehicle he used, unfortunately, was a media platform, a reputable media platform he used in conveying this message. He did that in error. So what the regulatory body is saying is that you allow this person to continue this statement in your stations without a rebuttal. Therefore, you have gone against the ethics of the NBC, and it is liable for fine to the tune of 5 million naira. This is not the first time. Have you forgotten that AIT has been sanctioned in the past? Have you forgotten that Daily Trust has been closed down in this country? Have you even forgotten that the same organization we are talking about here, Channels, has been shut down in this country as a result of that? So it's because of the situation we are. That's why I say we need to be very, very careful so that we will not take what is bad for what is good because of the situation and circumstances at hand now. So what Adati Baba Ahmed did was wrong. And if he still insisting that he stand by what he said, it is quite unfortunate. I mean, you heard all the cacophony.
Okay, I think network has gotten in the way, because I'd like to also ask Rashid if there is no room for people to express their concerns over, the just okay. All right, Rashid, I'd also like to ask. As we try to wrap this up. Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
So you've heard from people, individuals or group of persons condemning this act. So including those who are even in support of his political party, they all condemn him. See, we have only one country. It's only when Nigeria survives that all of us can survive. It's only when we protect the sanctity of this country that we can begin to complain all the bad things that we say we did not want. But Nigeria first. The survival of this country is in the hands of you and I, and we must take everything possible in ensuring that this country survives. We are in a very delicate situation, and we must be very careful in ensuring that our sanctity, our unity, our country is protected. This is just my message. Okay.
Okay. At the end of the day, I would have also liked to ask if there is also a faction of this where we are looking at that people cannot express themselves and their grievances over the proceedings of the just concluded election, because it's more like we are pushing further to a place where we are saying everyone should just take the election the way it was and let's move forward. It feels like that is what the ruling party is asking for. Most politicians are asking for. Let's just forget all this and let's move on. The election has been done and dusted. Take it as you have seen it. Is that what we really want as a country, so that it looks like more than everywhere is at peace?
My opening statement when we started this discussion was that any attempt by anybody, whether ruling party or opposition party, whether individual or group of persons, whether an organization, government or private, to guard the media in this country will not work. It has happened before, it did not work. If it happens now, it will not work. So the issue of who is involved is not even an issue here. A couple of times I have heard you on air try to, moderate your guests if they want to go on extreme. That is the way to go. And if it's an issue that borders on national security, nothing stops you or your organization to say this is not our intention. We did not, whatever this our guests say, it's not from our organization, but from the individual that we invited. We hereby tender apology. It's as simple as that. So to express ourselves, that is our fundamental human right. Nobody can take it away from us. Even if Nigeria government want to take it from us, we still have international charter and cooperation. We have international protocol that support that. So nobody can take that one away from us. When the military junta in the heights of Abacha and in the heights of Babangida and Abacha tried to do that, the international community supported us, and that was why you had something like Radio Kudrat for those who fought for this democracy in the Nadeko days. So nobody can take that one from us. It's our right, and inalienable right. Nobody can take it from us. But even as we are saying that we shouldn't go extreme, the fact that you have right to kill doesn't mean that you should kill anyhow. The military or the security or the law enforcement agencies who are giving gun or arms to protect the country, they were giving that arm not to shoot aside or to kill anybody anyhow. They can only pull out that trigger when it becomes necessary and there are no other options. This is what we are saying. Nigeria belongs to all of us. We don't have another country. The fact that we are not doing well today does not mean that tomorrow will not be good. And that tomorrow can only be good if the country still survives. This is the message we are trying to pass.
All right.
Thank you so much, Rashida Lariwaju. I like the fact that you landed on the note that Nigeria is the only country that we have, and we should be guided also by our utterances, whether we are government or political parties or anybody, you know, be guided by your utterances as well. Thank you so much, Rashida Lariwaju. It's always a pleasure having you on set. Yeah, that we have it, but I think at this point we'll just take a short breather. And when we come back, of course, we'll be looking at our different headlines on the national dailies this morning. So do stay tuned and don't move a muscle.
Like your chicken to be prepared, whether it's spicy or you want to dip it, in a sauce, or there's several ways you can serve chicken.
Barbecue,
barbecue,
roasted,
however,
grilled, any way you want it.
So
of course,
that's one of the recipes we've handed you there. Just take care of yourself today. But then serious matters are still happening. Food is as serious as the things we are saying. I mean, Nigeria is the only country we have, so we also have to eat. But then we have to talk of serious issues. At this point, we're going to be moving straight to our daily spotlight, where we'll be looking at the front pages of our national dailies, what's happening in Nigeria this morning.
Yeah, and of course, give a chance to Nigerians also,
of course,
to have their say and have their opinion as well. All right, Daily Spotlight bringing you major stories on the front pages of our national dailies, and we are going to start with the Nation newspaper this morning. And of course, just as expected, the major story here says federal government Obi Dati's action treasonable. And of course, the writer says polls integrity intact. Soyinka decries Dati's TV charts. Obi denies it all. We also have wreck in governorship election bribe mess. I think that's the River State story now. And the writer says how attempts to smuggle ballot papers was foiled. Okay. We also have that government hails 10% hike in excise duty on non-alcoholic drinks. Neck goes tough on discos over meters. Trump pleads not guilty to 34 felony counts. Serious issues in the United States. Finland joins NATO, Russia protests. And that's all the stories that we have on the front page of the Nation newspaper.
Moving on from the Nation this morning, we're going to be looking at the Punch newspaper. Let's take the Punch newspaper, and the very big story on the Punch says Obi Dati risk treason charges, federal government warns. Labour Party presidential candidate deputy calling for insurrection treasonable, says minister. Obi should face the law, says APC. Federal government's allegations reckless, says Obi PDP. Reps condemn calls for interim government, ask DSS to arrest enemies of democracy. We also have here foreign investors, Sean Kano, Rivers, Ogun, 24 states, page 21. Naira crisis, cash circulation low, NLC tells CBN, page 11. Nigeria more divided than Civil War era, says Sanusi. Page 20 is where you can find that particular story. We also have here protest as Trump pleads not guilty to criminal charges. We also have a picture image there, says with Donald Trump's face, carry nobody is above the law. We also have here Ramadan, avoid offensive sermons, Etsu Nupek tells clerics. Whitney, Corona, okays Christland's independent autopsy. The very last story that we have on the front page of the Punch newspaper says Afenifere crisis deepens. Youths ask Adebanjo to step down. And those are all the stories that we have on the front page of the Punch.
Okay, we go over now to our very next paper, and that will be the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune, the big story says treason allegation, Obi knocks Lai Muhammad. And the writer says your accusation malicious, fictitious, he says, as minister accuses him of treason, inviting insurrection, says INEC withheld uploading presidential results on suspicion of cyber attack. NCC denies tracing or tracking leaking Obi's phone conversation with Oyedepo. We also have that 8 students abducted in Kaduna. You can find that story on page 27. Buhari orders Nasani boss to vacate office. Page 27 is where you get details of that story. Adamawa, PDP insists on REC removal. The writer says Adamawa people will never surrender mandate. Moving forward, I have no preferred candidate in Kogi, says Atiku. National Assembly presiding officers, APC governors meet today. We also have reps condemns calls for interim government. Of course, everyone is condemning that actually. In historic arraignment, Trump pleads not guilty to 34 felony charges. And court orders interim forfeiture of ex-Nimasa DJ's 725 million naira Banana Island property. Media group slam embassy over 5 million naira fine on Channel's television. And those are all the stories that we have on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
Okay, moving on from the Nigerian Tribune, let's do the Vanguard newspaper. Looking at the Vanguard this morning, the very big story on the front page says subsidy removal will set Nigeria on fire. NLC warns government. We also have here Capital. Okay, says incoming government should focus on local refining, not subsidy. Insists Labour won't accept fuel price hike in name of subsidy removal. Deregulation, not subsidy removal, better for Nigeria, says oil marketers. Domestic refining of fuel critical, says CPPE. Capital importation records fourth decline to $1.06 billion in quarter 4 of 2022. That story can be found on page 19. Treasury looters using foreign currency exchange to launder funds, Giaba warns. Page 4. Alleged treason, stop harassing people, Ayo Adebanjo Eliazu tells federal government. Tinubu presidency, Sanusi may return as CBN governor. Page 9. Media groups tackle NBC over 5 million fine against Channels TV. Page 10. We also have here, we've no power to track leak phone conversations, says NCC, who then did. Okay. Bandits insist on payment of 100 million naira ransom to free 56 abductees. Kill monarch, others in Benue communities. Page 6 is where you can find that story. Treason, end campaign of Kalmini, Obi tells federal government. IPOB, Hope deems over bail for detained Ezendigbo in Lagos. Page 6. Afe Babalola, the story here says it's imperative that we take it upon ourselves to identify areas where we can contribute meaningfully to the lives of others, and in so doing, perhaps we might just be given a miracle. Okay, I think there are different words here. In sports, we have Onyeka out of Brentford's clash with Man United. Baba Ahmed, unless they have already given up on the country, this is time to stop the slide to irretrievable disaster that will also consume them. Okay, a lot of conversations here on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. If you want more details, pick it up today.
Okay, so let's look at our last paper for the morning, and that is Daily Sun. Of course, it also has a story of treason. Federal government Obi trade words over treason allegation. The writer says Lai Mohammed accuses Labour Party candidate running mate of inciting insurrection. Your claims malicious, fictitious, replies Obi. 10th Senate, South-East, South-South group intensify campaign for Kalu Akpabio. And the writer says Izunasu meets Buhari, says he deserves position as old as APC senator from Eastern Nigeria. And of course, you can find details of that story on page 26. Moving forward, election materials, we follow due process, INEC tells PDP and APC. The writer says urges political parties to inspect election materials at local government areas. More trouble for Nigeria as unemployment rate may hit 40.6%. KPMG. Human Rights Commission records 22 hate speech incidents in last elections. Financial infraction Senate panel indicts 37 MDAs. Jonathan, governors, Ohaneze, others pay tribute to late Kalu's wife. Kwara reps demand zoning speakership to North Central joins race. And Soyinka flays attack on non-indigents in Lagos. The writer says faults Dati Ahmed's comment on Tinubu. We also have a last story here that says bandits abduct 10 secondary school students in Kaduna. Quite a sad story there on that particular one. But these are all the stories that we have on our front page of the national dailies this morning. Yep. At this point, we'll open up our phone lines and give Nigerians the opportunity to have their say. Of course, let's hear you and what your opinion is about some of the issues being raised on the front page of the national dailies. But before that, let's quickly look at this particular comment by Wole Soyinka. Of course, Nobel laureate for literature, and he's saying that what the comments by Baba Dati Ahmed is actually uncalled for, and describing it as unbecoming as well, and more like you just had to guide yourself in terms of making this kinds of comment. And I think, just as Rashid said, leaning a little bit on what Rashid is saying, I think that it's time for Dati Baba Ahmed to actually come out and say if he's been quoted out of context. I try to tell Nigerians exactly what he meant when he said that there will be no more democracy, when you swear in the president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Let Nigerians know exactly what he meant, because it could be that, we have to look at speeches from different angles. It could be that he's saying, look, because he thinks, that the process at which the president-elect has been announced, is not democratic enough. It could be that he's coming from that angle. And also, it could also mean that, there's going to be some kinds of protest after which the president-elect is being inaugurated on the 29th of May. So I think at this point, Nigerians are having different opinions about that particular comment. Dati Baba Ahmed, as a Democrat that he says he is, and a responsible Nigerian, and one who has also, on the grounds of democratic process, been able to express himself this much, come out and let Nigerians know exactly what he meant by that comment. And if it is something that he needs to apologize to Nigerians, and of course he has to do it, for there to be peace in the country, because we are looking at a situation where we want peace. We want a country where we are still united as one. Let's not also forget that there's been a lot of clamor for secession and all of that. And so if we still have people come out and make comments that are indicting and is causing some kinds of insurrection, that there will be some miscreants that will pick up on that opportunity and cause some kind of havoc in the country.
Especially if we are looking at the fact that he's being quoted out of context and people are trying to, drag the statement to use it for their different, gains at this time. It's important for him to clear himself. And if we also see, we have seen several people on Twitter react to this also, saying, like you had commended earlier, it was important that, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party had immediately stepped on the ball to refute some of the things that have been said. This is not the time for either of the party to be quiet over the issues that are happening, so that it doesn't snowball into something else. I also think it's important that if we have people, policy makers and people who defend our policy, there should be people who look into these kinds of issues and help interpret it very well. Because if the likes of Dati Baba Ahmed leaned on the Constitution, there should be people that come to say, oh, Dati Baba Ahmed, although you stated this according to the Constitution, this and this are the reasons why these things are happening. So we need more people who have better grasp and better understanding of constitutional proceedings to also come and offer help to the politicians, to the electorate, to the country as a whole, not just taking one thing and running to hit up the polity. We are in a really dicey time, and we need those who are educated with the better understanding of the policies of this country to come to the rescue of the country as of now.
Yeah, definitely. Our phone lines are open. Do well to call us and have your say on the conversations. We have different, headlines on this, our national dailies this morning. But one that is across all our national dailies is this particular one of the federal government and the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, where they are trading words over treason allegation. So far, so good. What do you think are the comments of the presidential candidate of the Labour Party? Is it treasonable or it is not treasonable? And then another headline now that has caught my attention is actually some of the things happening, the insecurity happening in northern Nigeria, Kaduna in particular. We were thinking that to a large extent, some of those insurrections or some of this violence and kidnappings, and abductions would have ended to a large extent. But it's quite pathetic to see that in Kaduna State now, bandits abducted 10 secondary school students in Kaduna. It's quite a pathetic and sad story to hear. We hope that the government will do everything within their possible reach to make sure that these students are actually released. And it still brings us to the question at which we ask, why must it be, school children all of the time? We remember the, so many issues have happened. The Chibok girls, there was one other one that happened where secondary school boys were kidnapped as well. So what is it that we're not doing right? And you know that when you even talk about education in northern Nigeria, it's said that they are educationally disadvantaged. So the few people that will go to school, are beginning to face some of these security issues and all of that. So it will still further plunge those northern countries, or northern states, I beg your pardon, into being more educationally disadvantaged, because people will not want to send their children to school anymore to just get them kidnapped and abducted by, bandits.
A lot of concerns. They will, of course, like you said, we keep wondering why the children and students are the endangered species in the war of, this crisis with, all of the factions that are fighting at this time in the north and the northeast. But we also saw that was, as a result of that, there was a dusk to dawn curfew, set up by the state government to just, maintain some law and order in that area. It's such a sad moment, but we do hope that something can be effectively done to, arrest the situation as it were. Of course, our phone lines are still open for you to call in and make your contributions. Several issues on the front burners this morning, top of which is still be that risking of treason charges as warned by the federal government. Different, if you roll the dice, it's falling on different sides. People have different opinions to this particular situation. Are these words really, heavy enough to be called treasonable? And several things still happening. Of course, the Labour Party presidential candidate has given his response to that particular allegation. And we're still looking at a lot of things happening on the front pages of our national dailies. I think something that caught my attention also is that I think we are on the 11th or 12th day of the Ramadan fast, and we are having Nupe Etsu warn against offensive sermons. Okay. So we'll be wondering, what kind of sermons that we are, he's speculating are going on, amongst our Muslim faithfuls at this time, that he's warning that, offensive sermons should not be preached in the course of this fast. We also had the president earlier at the beginning of the fast admonish Muslims to pray for the country, for the peace and unity of the country, as it were. So it will negate what this fast should stand for if we are having offensive sermons being preached in the course of this. And we do hope that, all of the community of our Muslim faithfuls will adhere to these kinds of warnings. And we are having conversation in the space of the polity that are pushing up tension. We shouldn't have so coming out of the religious sect also.
Definitely. And one here that, is on the front page of the Punch newspaper, still on Naira crisis, cash circulation low, NLC still telling CBN. I'm wondering why. What's the problem? The elections are over, so why are we not having good circulation of cash anymore in the country? And
there's even a funny twist to that, Janice. If you notice, there's been a little the whole crisis has abated a little bit. There's a little more access. You can buy money. We still buy money, but you're going to still buy it at far less the price as it was when the crunch was going on. But if you notice, the twist is the new Naira seem to have suddenly absolutely disappeared from the space, because you do not go to the banks and you get paid with the new Naira notes, or transactions have heavily reduced with the new Naira notes. So the problem is, where did the new Naira notes suddenly go again upon the release and the circulation of the old Naira notes? Was it that, you know, the volume that was printed was, you know,
too low?
Lower than barest minimum? Because, I mean, there's a lot of questions to be asked in this country. And the whole CBN redesign policy is something that really should be probed, whether it's by the EFCC or the ICPC. Because how is it that all of a sudden recirculate the old Naira and we cannot find a new Naira anywhere else?
Yeah, I think I saw something this morning where Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka made a comment on that regard, and you know, he had what he had to say, his own opinion about what happened, you know, for the cash crunch. But let's also look at this particular story before we even take a breather. The issue of fuel crisis and the removal of fuel subsidy during this particular administration, because it seems like the whole subsidy removal is getting more intense, and a lot of people have said that, okay, it's going to be happening within this particular administration, not the incoming administration. It's more like, okay, when Tinubu is properly sworn in, we are going to be having subsidy removal. Now, when you talk about subsidy removal, now one question that has been on the minds of a lot of Nigerians has been the issue of, do we even have subsidy in the first place? Okay, but let's assume that we have subsidy and we've been paying for subsidy, and that's why we've been having fuel at the price that we are having fuel and buying it at the price that we're buying it. Now, what's the guarantee that when you remove subsidy, there are things that have been put in place, infrastructures that have been put in place to make sure that it cushions the effect? Because if you're saying that we are going to be removing subsidy, we'll have a situation where we'll be buying fuel for as much as 500 naira. Because as we speak now, some places across the country, we're buying fuel for 250, 300, 350. So if we are buying fuel at that price, when you say that this administration, the incoming administration, will take fuel subsidy out, that means we'll be buying fuel for as much as 400, 450, 500, depending also. So now, has the government also put things in place, infrastructures in place, facilities in place, to make sure that it helps to cushion the effect? And it also helps to a large extent to reduce the number or the volume of fuel consumption that Nigerians actually need. Because if we are saying that we are removing fuel subsidy, and we know that a lot of companies, a lot of enterprises, media, small scale and medium enterprises in the country depend largely on power supply. Where will people get monies to run these businesses? So if you're saying we're removing subsidy, let it be that we do not have epileptic power supply in the country anymore, so that people would, you know, reduce their consumption of fuel.
And, you know, instead of depending that, because once we experience a price hike with regards to fuel in the country, it's also expected that we're going to be seeing a hike in every other commodity.
Of course, yes.
Because it's going to be affecting production, no matter how minimal it is. I mean, even if you go down to pure water production, once the fuel price hikes and people have to spend more to produce, it's going to affect the overall price of everything. And it's important to note that, you know, the oil marketers are beginning to raise their concerns about these things, and they have said, you know, it's not necessarily about removing subsidy. We are talking about looking into deregulation of how things are done in the oil and gas sector. Just like you brought it up, just to read it again. So, subsidy removal will set Nigeria on fire. This was the warning of the NLC, warning the federal government. Now, they say the incoming government should focus on local refining, not subsidy. Because if we are taking out all of the money that we are taking out of subsidy, we always ask, when you take out that chunk of trillion, where are you going to be investing it? We need to look at, you know, us being able to refine and produce our own oil and sell it back to the country, so that you're not taking away what made, you know, the fuel affordable for Nigerians. They get to buy it at higher prices, but you've not put anything in place to make sure that is abated. So we're having a lot of questions, come up again by the oil marketers, and they also talked about the fact that, of course, deregulation will be better for Nigeria than just saying we are taking out subsidy.
Yes. You're
taking out subsidy, and so what? What's next? These are a lot of questions that we're already asking. So we are even looking at the fact that although we have begun to enjoy what might look like a respite, that fuel was repumped back into the system, I think 2 weeks ago or thereabout. So you can easily drive into a fueling station and buy fuel at 250, 300 depending. Now it looks like we are okay. The Budget Management Agency has said by June, we are going to be taking up subsidy. If this is taken away by June, you're just leaving us with April, May to enjoy the purchase of fuel at 250. From June, what happens? And then it means we're going to be experiencing a hike in everything in the economy.
I think it will be counterproductive, because like the NLC has said, they are also getting ready to go on a protest, because if you're saying that let's remove fuel subsidy, where are the refineries to refine the oil that we'll use as fuel? But we'll just leave it at that for the paper reviews. And today actually is International Day of Conscience. Every 5th of April is being celebrated the world over as International Day of Conscience. And it's basically to promote the culture of peace with love and conscience. I like the fact that it's promoting peace. It's promoting peace, yes, with love and conscience. So whatever we do, I think that our conscience has a bigger role to play in all of this. And we'd like to tilt it back to all that is happening in Nigeria today. What is the level at which you're trying to promote peace, the culture of peace? And are you doing it with love and conscience? It's a big question that we are asking out this morning.
It's a big question, and humorously, I had earlier asked the International Day of Conscience, does the theme have anything to do with Nigeria? Because at this time, we absolutely need each and every one of us in this country to walk by our consciences. I remember prior to the election, we were saying vote your conscience, vote your conscience. It looks like Nigerians voted their conscience, did not get the result of their conscience, and now it feels like more people are trying to trade their conscience. But if we go back to read up on things pertaining to the International Day of Conscience, maybe our politicians, our policymakers, maybe we'll find a way to just give this country the peace and the unity and the rest that she undoubtedly needs in this season. But then, what are you doing with your conscience? It cuts and goes beyond what the federal government and policymakers are doing. You as an individual in your everyday life, in your workplace, family relationships, investment and all the likes, what is the quality of your conscience? Has your conscience been seared in your day-to-day relationship and activities? That question is for you to answer. Recheck your heart. Is your heart in a good place as a Nigerian?
Definitely.
But basically, I think that's all the conversation we can even take on Rise and Shine.
It is.
We're leaving you with a big question on your conscience this morning. But Rise and Shine has been absolutely amazing, and we believe that these conversations will help you to frame your mindset about things happening in the country. Do well to follow us across all social media platforms. You can find all that at spectrumtv.ng, so that if you just joined in, you can catch up on everything we did on Rise and Shine on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Facebook. My name is Uyai Aneka. Thanks for being a part of the show.
And don't also forget to follow us on our individual social media accounts at I am Janice Kobum. Just look for Janice Kobum and of course Uyai Anyekan across all social media. Do well to follow us and continue the conversation. Until we see you again tomorrow, keep growing a culture of peace with love and conscience. We'll leave you with Sports Central. Blyden Ukem and Isaac will be coming next. Bye-bye.
Spectrum TV, broadening